Adrienne Pasquarelli, Special Projects Editor and Senior Reporter at Ad Age, and welcome to another edition of the Marketer's Brief Podcast, our weekly discussion about marketing news and trends that have the industry buzzing. Athleta has been a bright spot in Gap Inc.'s stable of brands. The women's sportswear retailer has consistently embraced a power of she marketing platform, most recently featuring gymnast Simone Biles, who has long been an Athleta collaborator. Yet competitors in the women's sportswear space are also on the rise, causing Athleta to look to reinvigorate its brand. Today, we'll be talking with Ilona Aman, who joined Athleta as Chief Marketing Officer earlier this year. She'll discuss the new campaign, the brand's Olympics push, and what's ahead for back to school. Now here's my conversation with Ilona. Hi, Ilona. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me today.
So I know you joined Athleta earlier this year. Tell us a little bit about your background and also why you took the job.
Oh, absolutely. I could not be more excited about the opportunity to join a brand that's on its way to such an incredible transformation. I've spent the last 23 years working in the global sports industry. And one of the best things about working in this industry is that you're constantly working on the coolest, most exciting topics across sport and culture. And what became really apparent to me, especially after COVID, is the continued lack of conversation around women's sport and women empowerment, and just continuing to give access and create products and tell stories as it pertained to the women's space. And the reason I say that became important to me after COVID is because a big part of my career has been spent working on men's sport and men's sport culture, with my last role at Adidas being really focused on driving Beyonce's business. And as that came to a conclusion, again, with COVID, I became a mom to a daughter. And so it became so important to me to connect with brands who really stood behind sport and empowerment for women and girls. And so when I started talking to Athleta and I learned about their mission and their purpose around the power of she, and really this notion of igniting and propelling women forward, I just felt such a calling to be a part of that and be able to contribute to that story and that legacy for the brand, that the timing was quite serendipitous.
Now, you mentioned the Power of She platform, and that messaging has been very valuable for the brand for quite a while. I'm not sure exactly the timing. You can correct me on that. But why do you think that messaging has been able to resonate for so long with the brand?
I think the reason that the Power of She messaging has resonated so long with the brand is because the brand's inception began with the mission to be in service of women. And that mission has never rang more true. And so as the rest of the world has caught up and started to see the value and the importance of propelling women forward as it pertains to sport and movement culture, what's been really great for Athleta is we've had the authority and the voice in that space for over 20 years. And so for us, Power of She becomes not only our rally cry, but it's been part of our DNA from the very beginning of the brand.
And what do you see changing at the company, at the brand? Where do you see opportunities for female athletes, for new messaging as you grow into your role there?
We're on a mission to reinvigorate Athleta. And beyond that just being a very fun and interesting thing for me and my team and the brand to think about every single day, it also is a great position for us when we think about being back in the game and being a key player. So when we think about our playbook in totality within Gap Inc., and we think about our purpose and our product and our experience and all of that being rooted in flawless execution, that's where you see the evolution of the brand really starting to take shape. And this summer, as we think about the summer of the Power of She, becomes the first domino that drops, where you really start to feel the impact and the change of the work that's been done behind the scenes.
Now, I know Athleta has had quite a lot going on this summer, including a first time linear TV spot around the Olympics. Tell us about that new campaign and why you decided to go into a new channel.
It was really important for us as we look at the plans for summer and beyond to be driving relevance. That's one of our key pillars within our playbook and our brand. And part of that relevance is being really tied to what's happening in culture today. When we think about the role that the Olympics are playing in culture, not only in Paris, but how that transcends across oceans, and we think about the fact that it's taken 124 years for women to have equitable participation in the games, it was really important for us to think about our key partners with Simone Biles and Katie Ledecky and carve out a space where we can tell an emotional narrative rooted in the power of she. And so when we started crafting the campaign, we really went back to not only our roots, but recognizing the insight that we extracted, not only from Simone, but consumers who can relate to that mindset around landing in your own power and being able to quiet the noise to ultimately stand for the power of she. That was sort of the inception of how the campaign came to life. And then when we think about the role that the Olympics really play in households, this year especially, and the galvanizing power of bringing people together, it's one of the only times that we really see people coming together to watch television in real time, as opposed to only having a dependency on sort of their digital devices for updates on recaps of what's going on. That it felt like this was the channel that we really wanted to invest in order to land that story and show the world that we are here.
Now, in addition to TV, the campaign also involves some activations with customers writing postcards to athletes like Simone. How are community driven initiatives like this important for Athleta?
Community is at the center of everything that we consider, because for us, we are the strongest when we can come together holistically. And so when we think about our Power of She community and we think about the rally cry that not only is happening at the Olympics, but really from Olympics and beyond, it's so important to think about the center of our heartbeat. And the center of our heartbeat always goes back to our community. So when we considered the Power of She postcard initiative, not only was that a moment to celebrate our partners as we anticipate them having record-breaking performances at the Olympics, but it was also about bringing people together to celebrate the power of she women in their lives in a way that, again, champions this notion of empowerment and champions this notion of belonging, which always goes back to our mission. And because we apply everything through those filters, we're very authentic in how we shape that narrative and how our activations take place and how the consumer experiences our brand at different touch points in their journey.
Have you gotten any early results or feedback on how the campaign is performing?
We have heard tremendous positive feedback about the campaign, not only because of the artistry and the superhuman ability that Simone has, especially seeing that campaign run at the same time that you're experiencing Simone perform and do, again, gravity defying moves on the mat or on the beam or on the bars. But it creates an emotional response when then people see that narrative take shape in a campaign. And not only have we seen the results through our reach and our impressions, but we've also seen the feedback as consumers have very eagerly and positively shared the way that the spot has connected with them and the impact that it's had on them when they're coming into the stores to then connect with the brand in a different experience, to see how we're showing up from a product point of view, because there's always a product payoff to everything that we're doing. And that's just been so gratifying, because really consumers love and their sentiment and their feedback is how we know that we're doing the right thing.
Now, with the campaign, I understand that it was produced in-house, which I know in the past, Athleta has worked with some creative agency partners previously, particularly on the Power of She platform. Have you moved most of the creative in-house? And tell me about the change in strategy there.
Yeah, it's been a two-prong approach. So we did build the campaign and the creative in-house, and it was really important for us to reestablish our voice and reestablish our identity so that when we showed up in the world, we had a very consistent language and a very consistent way that the brand was speaking to consumers as we're, again, on this mission to reinvigorate the brand. Part of the process of reinvigoration is consistency. And that takes shape in not only how we're showing up, but also our tone of voice and how we're speaking. And so it was really critical for us to start in our own house first in order to set the precedent and the stage and sort of the playbook around how the brand needed to speak to its consumers in the most authentic way. And then as we think about what that looks like from an expansion standpoint, and we think about the importance of UGC content, and we think about the importance of socially native content, whether that's for Instagram or TikTok, that's where we start to expand our aperture. And whether it's working with partners or with agencies to really accelerate the depth and the speed of which we're producing content and we're telling stories, that's where we pull on different partnerships in order to deliver on that.
Well, speaking of your social media strategy, I'm wondering if you can talk about what platforms you're seeing success on for different generations. Are you seeing that one channel is particularly effective at reaching younger Gen Alpha shoppers for Athletic Girl? Are you seeing, Gen Zs gravitating more towards a TikTok or TV? Like, tell me about how that all trickles out.
I think one of the greatest learnings that we've had about the world of social media is just how much crossover there is of generations based on the role that TikTok is playing in people's lives versus Instagram versus Facebook versus Reddit versus X, formerly known as Twitter. And so what we've really focused on is how do we adapt to the native content to each respective platform so that we're authentically telling a narrative that isn't just a deployment of branded content, because that doesn't always work equally on every single channel. And so when we think about the way that we tell a narrative on TikTok, it is very different than how we tell a narrative on Instagram, because that audience might see that content on both platforms, but the way they respond to each platform is very different based on the behaviors that each of the platforms have developed.
So where are you finding that your Athletic Girl shoppers are gravitating toward?
Our Athleta girl shopper is still very much influenced by Instagram, because part of that influence is coming through the participation that her mom has with our brand. And so it's a dual relationship where her mom is being inspired and provoked by what she's seeing on Instagram. And in turn, she's having that dialogue and relationship with her daughter as it pertains to Instagram.
And paying for the clothing, likely.
Yeah, that's a nice benefit to having mom have share of wallet.
Well, even as Athleta is reinvigorating itself, there are still a lot of competitors, specifically in the women's space, like Lululemon, for example. I'm wondering how you guys think about handling the competition and what is setting Athleta apart, because a lot of brands do pursue a message of female empowerment as we see this women's sports interest continue to rise.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we've determined as a critical point of difference for us is this notion of not only the inception of the brand of always being in service of women. We don't actually have any other categories that we serve outside of the women's business. And so it allows us to have a maniacal focus on everything that we do across our product and our purpose and our experience. It always goes through the lens of female consumer insights, which is a strong point of difference for us. When we think about the power of she, and we think about the role that the power of she plays within our entire ecosystem of not only being a content engine, but a product engine and a relevance engine, and all of that becomes underpinned by community. For us, it's less about thinking about what the competitor is doing and more about listening to our consumer and being in service of them. Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to be Lululemon. We're not trying to be Nike. We're not trying to be Viore. We feel very confident about the role that we play in her life as Athleta. And as we continue to build that relationship with her by delivering on the things that she expects through the initiatives that we have, through the partners that we work with, she continues to build on that relationship with us as a reciprocated effort.
Now, Athleta is owned by Gap Inc. and so counts Gap, Old Navy, and Banana Republic as your sister brands. I'm wondering how much brand overlap there might be when it comes to marketing and creating synergies between the brands, particularly as you're handling more work internally.
For us, we have a really fantastic group of marketers across each of the brands, and we stay in very close proximity to one another as it pertains to sharing insights and best practices. Where we start to have our own lanes is we do have a very sharp point of view on each of the brand's consumers that we're serving. And as a result of that, each brand requires different strategy and tactics to be in service of each of their consumers, which is where we ensure that we have differentiation in how we show up from a storytelling standpoint, from a brand standpoint, from a voice point of view, from a messaging point of view. And while we also share in some of the key milestones as it pertains to the calendar, part of the cohesive way that we work together is staying in close proximity so that everybody has their lane and can coexist at those accelerated milestone moments while also being incredibly specific and intentional in how we choose to market and connect with each of our consumers.
And we're just in the thick of back to school marketing right now. Is that a time? I know that those sister brands do have a lot of messaging around back to school, Gap in particular. Is that a time frame that Athleta also leans into? And if so, what do you have planned for this year?
It absolutely is. Right now, we're absolutely all hands on deck for the Olympics, but we're excited to build on the energy of the Olympics with the launch of the Simone Biles first multi-gen assortment that will be in stock right going into back to school for fall. And so as we think about our phases of what the power of she summer looks like, everything has an intentional purpose and existence to drive that exciting mission and relevance that we're looking to achieve coming out of the Olympics, with back to school being ingrained into that process.
And have you noticed any differences in how people are shopping for back to school versus in school and e-commerce? Are there any changes that you've seen in this year and recent years just based on your history working in retail?
I think the biggest observation that I've seen with back to school behavior is driven by brands. Back to school is being pulled further and further up. Historically, back to school timing usually was very lights on for brands in August. And I think as school years have changed, start dates to school has changed, whether you're on the East Coast or the West Coast, if you're in private school versus public school, all of those date changes have driven things being pulled up in the calendar. And so you're experiencing that for milestones like back to school or holiday, where things are about 45 to 60 days sooner than they used to be, which requires us to move much faster in responding to that, because the behaviors of back to school and what consumers are looking for from a product standpoint is very fall related product during a time where a majority of the country is experiencing fairly increased temperatures. And so you're doing the fine dance of how much product do you sort of showcase and drive that's summer related versus how much fall product do you introduce to stay on speed and trend with what the consumer is doing.
Yeah, that's a very delicate balance of no one wants flannel in August, but you really can't think of back to school without conjuring a vision of flannel and plaids and denim and fleece. So
I mean,
I
I
don't
see
envy
some
you that.
stores having Christmas trees up and I'm shocked. I'm like, wait, what? We skipped like 6 holidays in between. How are we already showing ornaments and wrapping paper?
Well, speaking of Christmas, I was going to say, is it too early to get a hint of what to expect from Athleta for holiday this year?
Oh, it's never too early. The one nugget I will share is it's all about gifting and the joy of bringing people together over the holidays, whatever form of celebration you have. And we are beyond energized about all the plans that we have coming off of the Olympics going into holiday.
Well, we're out of time. Ilona, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure, and I look forward to when we can speak again.
That was Ilona Aman, Chief Marketing Officer at Athleta, and I'm Adrienne Pasquarelli, Special Projects Editor and Senior Reporter at Ad Age. I'd like to thank our producer, Lauren Chiardio, and invite you to subscribe to the Marketer's Brief podcast on your favorite player. We promise to keep it brief or at least short enough for your morning coffee. Thanks for tuning in.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.